You know that feeling when you're following a big, complex story in the news and you just feel like you're only getting part of the picture? You see all the headlines, you see the statistics, but you know there's more to it, right? The human side, the why behind the what. Well, let's dive into this because there's actually a formal research approach designed to solve that exact problem.
I mean, we are just swimming in data all the time. But on their own, numbers can feel, well, a little empty. The quantitative data, all the stats and figures, they tell one story. But the human experience, that often tells a completely different one. Just think back to the pandemic for a second. On one hand, you had this flood of quantitative data every single day: new cases, vaccination rates, economic numbers. That stuff shaped public policy. But on the other hand, you had the qualitative stories, these really personal accounts from people explaining why they were hesitant. Now, both of those things are true, but neither one tells the whole story by itself.
So that leads to this really powerful question, doesn't it? What if there was a way to intentionally combine the strengths of both, the hard numbers and the rich personal stories, to get a deeper, more complete understanding of what's going on?
Well, guess what? There is. It's called mixed methods research, and it's a really powerful approach that stands right alongside the traditional quantitative and qualitative methods that you might be more familiar with. So what is it really? At its core, the definition is pretty simple. It's all about intentionally, and that word is key, intentionally collecting and combining both quantitative or closed-ended data, think multiple choice surveys, and qualitative or open-ended data like interviews. And the whole point is to combine them to get way more insight than either one could ever give you on its own. And this diagram here, it's basically the blueprint for how it all works. The core idea is simple. You collect both types of data, you find a structured way to connect them, and that connection, that's what lets you draw these amazing conclusions and insights that you just couldn't have seen otherwise. The real engine that drives this whole process is a concept called integration. And this isn't just about, sticking two different data sets in the same report. It's the deliberate act of mixing or combining them, either merging them side by side to see how they line up, or having one build on the other.
So what's the ultimate payoff for all this work? It's something called meta-inferences. And honestly, this is the whole reason you do it. These are the brand new insights, the aha moments, that only show up when you look at the integrated data. It's the knowledge you couldn't get from just the numbers or just the stories alone. Okay, so how do researchers actually do this? It's not just random. It's very structured. Let's take a look at the three main recipes, or what researchers call the core designs for making it happen. Yeah, thinking of these designs as recipes is the perfect way to get it. Each one mixes the ingredients, the numbers and the stories, in a different order for a different purpose, but always with the same goal: to tell a much more complete story. All right, recipe number one, the convergent design. Here you collect both the quantitative and the qualitative data at roughly the same time. Then you merge them to compare. Do the numbers and the stories tell the same tale? Do they support each other? Or do they kind of diverge and point to something a lot more complex? Next, we've got the explanatory sequential design. Now, this one is a two-step process. You start with the quantitative data. Maybe your survey shows a really surprising trend or some kind of outlier. You then use qualitative methods, like interviews, to follow up and dig into the why behind those numbers. You're explaining the stats. And finally, the exploratory sequential design. It completely flips that script. You start with the qualitative data. You hear people's stories. You explore a topic that isn't really well understood yet. Then you use all those rich themes and ideas to build a much better quantitative tool, like a really good survey, that you can then use with a much, much larger group. So what's really cool is how researchers visually bring these different types of data together to generate those meta-inferences we were just talking about. There's a specific tool just for that. It's called a joint display. And the best way to think of it is like a dashboard that puts your quantitative results and your qualitative results right next to each other in a single table or graph. This is the actual space where the integration happens and where those new patterns suddenly become visible. Okay, so take a look at this. It's a perfect example of what one looks like. Imagine down the side, you've got your quantitative survey scores: high, medium, and low. And then across the top, you have the qualitative themes you heard in your interviews. By filling in this grid, you can suddenly see the patterns. You can literally see how the stories are different for the high scores versus the low scores. That's where the magic happens. So, okay, this is a really fascinating process. But why does it matter in the real world? What
is the ultimate value of going through all this extra effort to get the full picture?
Well, the power here is just huge. It moves us beyond just seeing a problem to truly understanding it. When some strange statistic pops up, we can now actually explain it. When we build tools like surveys, they're grounded in real human experience, which makes them so much more effective. And maybe most importantly, it gives a real voice to marginalized groups by combining that broad data with their specific personal stories. And this isn't some creative free-for-all either. As you can see from this flowchart, choosing the right design is a very systematic process. Researchers ask a series of logical questions, like, are we comparing data or are we building on it? Do we start with numbers or do we start with stories? This whole process ensures that the method fits the research question perfectly. And what's truly amazing is how these core designs can be used as building blocks. I mean, think about a massive clinical trial. You can actually embed a qualitative study right inside it to understand the patient experience, not just the cold, hard medical outcomes. It brings the power of the full picture to even the most complex projects out there. So it really leaves us with this final thought. When we combine the precision of numbers with the rich context of human stories, are we just gathering more data? Or are we actually getting one step closer to a more complete, more authentic truth?